Welcome back to the My First Rodeo podcast, the show where we talk to really cool, interesting, and famous people about the various firsts on their path to success. Today is no exception. We have the very funny, the very talented Jamie Schreiner, comedian, singer, actress, who puts it all together in a really great way, better than anybody I've seen, combining all of those devices into one beautiful package, colorful, more colorful than life. And I think you're going to, well, certainly if you know Jamie and follow Jamie and are a fan, you're going to enjoy this episode. And if you haven't heard of her or haven't checked out her comedy, I hope you're going to enjoy getting to know her and be interested in checking her out at Jamie Sings, Jamie Schreiner Sings, because that's what she does. She is a trained musical theater artist who came to comedy in an overlapping path in her pursuit of theatrical excellence, obtained a master's degree in that art as well, and then pulls the comedy and the music together in a really neat way. I got to know her personally when we both participated in the Plano, Texas Comedy Festival earlier this year, but was aware of her before that, and always admired, and certainly when I got to see her in person, admired how she, I don't know, just combines a sweetness and an innocence in the way she presents her music, at least the first part of it, and then they often take a darker turn that is just really funny and disarming. And she talks about it during the interview. I'm not even sure I asked the questions well, but her answer really enlightened how, comedy is male driven, like so many things. And a lot of it caters to the male audience and certainly to the male comics in the back of the room. And she's not, I don't think, trying to exclude them, not by a long shot. In fact, I find her really, really amusing, regardless of gender. But she wants to make sure that the other people in the room are represented and laugh and feel like they've got somebody performing for them. And she does that. She does that beautifully. We have a lot of good topics that we cover. And she's thoughtful and really another person who's just wise beyond their years. And I think you're going to enjoy the episode. I know I did. There was, I would say, one technical issue I'll give you a heads up towards because of the nature of Zoom, and we were not together physically. She was in Chicago. I was in Jacksonville, Florida. There's a little bit of a delay in terms of when questions are asked and when there are responses, and then it goes the other way. And it sounds like we're both just being very thoughtful, but be patient. I think it's a very slight delay, and hopefully doesn't take away from the interview. We're getting near the end of the year. It is December, and we've not been together in a little while. If you listen regularly, I really haven't put out an episode in a month and a half or so. I will say my mother passed away, which certainly occupied my time. God rest Audrey's soul. She went out laughing, and she enjoyed the podcast and enjoyed the comedic outlet. So we push forward. But the other reason is I'm committed to putting out episodes when I have really good people to interview. And if I don't, because I haven't done the work to get them, or I just don't have that person queued up, then no episodes. But I'm going to put out a handful of them before the end of the year, and I'm excited about that. It's going to be comedy heavy. So if you like the episodes where I interview comedians, I think you'll be excited. But these are all about human interest. They're all about meeting people. And some of them happen to be comedians. Some of them are surgeons. Some of them are people who've been in prison and did amazing things in their story of victory, and everybody in between. And they're really all about getting to know people, if you haven't figured that out already. But I'll let you know that after this episode, we're going to have Nick Harvey, a really funny comedian with a dry bar comedy special. You're going to love him. Jen Weeks as well, one of my favorites in comedy. And I think you're going to enjoy all of those quite a bit, which will pop before the end of the year. And we'll wrap up the year with really the episode. One of them that I get the most attention for is for having an interview or a conversation with my daughter, Samantha Rose, who is keeps me on my toes. I always say we have a reality show for two people without an audience. because I am a 57-year-old man. She is a 16-year-old young lady, and we act like a couple of eighth grade boys most of the time. But the conversation I had with her that we last recorded got a lot of attention. People like to listen to it. And I think closing out the year, talking about trends and cultures and growth will be an interesting way to finish things up. So, yeah, I really do appreciate you listening. I hope you enjoy this conversation today. This is me talking to Jamie Schreiner. So you said you're working on a surprise birthday. Is it a surprise birthday party or just a regular birthday party?
It's a surprise birthday party, but I think she might know it's happening. But I want her to, if we can even surprise her just a little bit, I would be pleased. But I think she might know. I think she might have an inkling that it's happening. Her name is Alexa Yeager. So she's a comedian based in Chicago as well. We collaborate a lot on like digital sketches. And we used to, when I first started comedy in Chicago, we ran a show together called Shady Babies. We also ran a show together called Naughty Thoughts, which was at the Laugh Factory in Chicago. And so one of my first Chicago comedy friends, Alexa.
That's very neat. Very neat. And you were saying before we started recording that you're celebrating her leaving the 20s, but that seems insignificant because you've left the 20s some time ago.
Yes. I'm 33 now. And I feel like, honestly, looking back, I'm grateful for my 20s, but I've enjoyed my 30s so much more. The past 3 years have been amazing. It's been a really good time. Well, actually, it'd be because 30, 31, 32. It'd be 4 years, technically, if you count the... Yeah, so...
You seem like one of those people that's both older than your years, but also younger than your years at the same time. Is that possible?
Yeah, no, it's funny because today is also the day that Spotify Wrapped came out, and I somehow managed on my Spotify Wrapped. I had like a bunch of very popular with Gen Z artists in my top 5, but then it said that my listening age was 74 because I listened to a bunch of 60s music as well. So I was like, okay, which one is it though?
Yeah, it's hard to categorize you from your music. I was thinking more in terms of your comedy and your spirit and your attire. As I was looking at your online presence, and it's just colorful is the first word that comes to mind. And I was thinking, thank goodness Jamie didn't live in a time where there was only black and white photography.
It's funny. I feel like Lucille Ball is that way too, where it's like, I wish I could have seen all of the colors on her in the way that she's filmed. But because, yeah, you look at like those color corrected photos of her and she had the bright red lipstick and the red hair and she is a very colorful person too. But yeah, I definitely think having color photography does benefit the aesthetic I'm going for sure.
Yeah. And I mean, not that I know you that well, but I think from being familiar with your comedy and now more familiar with it, you're just a colorful person too.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. No, I think it's something that I definitely was in my high school and teen years. And then kind of I tried to conform a bit in early adult life, mid to early to mid 20s. I think I was like, oh, let me try to be more normal with it. And then I think as I found my voice more in comedy, I was like, oh, wait, no, I love being like the quirky cat lady vibe. I don't actually want to fit in this way. This is just what I was told I should want.
Yeah, I see that. I see there's a quiet part about you. And it seems like a lot of your songs are delivered in a way where they start off, for lack of a better word, normal and well sung, I will add. A lot of them you sing with your beautiful voice. Some of them you sing, it seems, with a deliberately dissonant voice, but we'll come back to those. But it starts off like any other lovely song, and then it turns into this cognitive dissonance where you're both louder and bigger, and then the lyrics get darker, but still happy.
Yeah, no, I think that you described me so beautifully. I think it's because one of the big pieces of I don't know if feedback's the word. Something that people noticed about me, I think this was I did a festival in Las Vegas in 2024. So it was last year. And my manager at the time was telling me, everyone kept saying that you're so quiet. Like in the green room, you were really quiet and you weren't really trying to, make a show of yourself, I guess was the words but it's like, I think it's one of those things where it's like, I don't be quiet out of like any malice. I just think that, as somebody who like, I have a background in theater, one of those things that I remember so much were the people who were so big in the audition waiting room and would take up all that space. I feel like I almost like really try to conserve that energy for when I get on stage. And I think that also just like, I'm a very observant person. And so I kind of like to just sit back and listen to what's going on. And, if I have something to contribute, I'll throw it out there. But, yeah, I think me being like that is probably largely because I'm a middle child. I think I grew up in a house where I kind of hung back and I observed what everybody else was doing. And so I think that that's translated into my, adult personality. But it's like my comedy, I think, is where I kind of get to take up that space that I really, in adult life as well as like in my upbringing, I kind of would let the people around me take up that space and I would hang back a bit. But in my comedy, I get to really kind of let some of those like inner monologue things out.
Yeah, that's definitely what it looks like. In fact, anecdotally, you and I met in Plano, and me and my friend Mary were sitting in the back waiting for the show to get started. We were on the same show, and you couldn't have been quieter. It just so happened either we sat down next to you or you sat down next to us, and we exchanged a few words. But man, when you get on stage and you're this huge personality, we're like, is that the person we were just sitting next to?
Yeah, and I wonder if I don't know. Because, I think it's a thing where I definitely, my close friends, I'm sure would say that I have a big personality. But I do think in those moments of like professional social interaction, I'm like, I try to be polite and like contain some of that energy. And I think it's really, ultimately just because like I like to make space for everybody around me. And I want everybody to like feel comfortable showing up as they are, so to speak. I almost just, and maybe it's the middle child or the caregiver. I don't know what it is, but I just very easily slip into that role of like, I'm adapting and making space for everyone around me to be wherever they're at.
It's a lovely quality for sure. You say you're a middle child, and you're kind of a middle child on steroids, assuming there's truth in your humor, and I think there are on these points. One, you are hearing impaired. Is that the right way to say it?
Yes.
And you have two amazingly hot sisters on either side of you.
Yes. And it's like, I joke about that in Quan Baby, and I do like joke about it just like throughout life. Because the thing is, it's like, I don't think that I'm like by any means ugly. It's just like, I grew up in Indiana, and it was a place where it was like, I was tall, I was curvier. Like, I didn't really get my flowers for attractiveness because I didn't fit that mold of what attractive is in the state I grew up in. And it's like, now, I've joked that like, really, I feel like if I go anywhere south of Indiana, like Kentucky, Tennessee, anywhere south, I get treated so nice. And I'm like, I'm not used to this because it's like, where I grew up, that it's just not what the body type or the appearance that's celebrated. But all that being said, I think that, I think that from a very young age, I really liked being the center of attention when it was my turn to be the center of attention. But I kind of learned that like, it's not always my turn. And so I think almost that's like, you share the spotlight with people, you give other people a turn. But I do think that one of my favorite childhood stories is like, me and my sisters were making a play for my dad for his birthday. We were going to perform for him. We must have been like 3, 5, and 6, or, like we were quite young. And it was my part of the show. I was doing my part. And my sisters thought it would be a fun prank to just like start dancing around in front of me and upstage my moment. And they to this day laugh about how angry I got. Like, I was just like crying and screaming. I was like, this is supposed to be my part. Why are you guys, And I think that is, it's such a middle child thing, but I do think very much comedy is the antithesis to this is supposed to be my part, you guys. Like, so it's like, you know, I kind of get the opportunity to have this one-sided conversation where everybody kind of has to listen to me, unless, you know, they obviously, you've experienced being heckled. Most comedians have. There are situations where they maybe don't want to listen, they get up and leave, but in general, I get to kind of have my part of the of the play every time I get on stage now.
Yeah, it may work, it may not, but it is your moment. And I know it works more often than it doesn't for you. And not to sound defensive to our viewers, but I think you're quite lovely. Not that you need me to say that, but the description you give of your sisters, and I've not met them, makes me think that they are objectively just gorgeous. And there's something about being a pretty person, I've always thought, having not been a pretty person, where just, you know, opportunities come to you, people look at you differently, and it can be a disadvantage to some degree in terms of preparing you for life. But I would imagine if I were growing up around, you know, my siblings were, you know, Brad Pitt and George Clooney, you know, and I don't look like either of them. Yeah, that would just be a certain place I would feel like I am. Not ugly, but certainly that type of attention would be drawn away.
Absolutely. And I think especially like all of us were doing plays and theater as kids. And that's definitely an arena where you absolutely get rewarded for being pretty. That's absolutely a pretty privilege. I mean, if you look at, like, you know, everybody's going crazy about the new Wicked movie that came out, and the you know, the beauty standards portrayed in that. And I don't have much to say about that specifically, but I will say, like, in musical theater world, I was like, I'm bigger now. I'm more of a plus size woman now than I was in my teen years, but definitely like as a teenager, because I was 5'9" and like a size 8 or 10, I was always like the fat best friend, which you think about somebody being a size 8 or 10 being the fat best friend, and you're like, that's crazy. That's like a, you know, a mid-sized woman, but that's the world of musical theater. They very much prioritize the main character is always under 5'5", like 100 pounds soaking wet. That's that world. And until we, I guess, like, take a stand or demand different standards, that's going to continue to be what it is.
Yeah, and in Hollywood, it seems to me the trend is to have ugly people portrayed by beautiful people wearing makeup to look like they're ugly. Like, I just saw the new Frankenstein, which was beautiful. I don't actually know the actor that played Frankenstein. He was amazing. But I mean, for goodness sakes, isn't there one ugly person in Hollywood that could have Frankenstein?
He's a really, really hot guy. He's a super good. Yeah, no, Jacob Elordi is like incredibly attractive. So it's like, yeah, I mean, and it makes me think of like with The Whale, even, where they had what is it, Brendan Fraser in the fat suit. You know, it's like while I do think that like actors should be given an opportunity to, like, it's make believe, it's pretend, you know, you're playing something different. I want to see more medium to ugly people actually cast in things. I'm so serious. Like, yeah, because I think it's like it would for like a mid to ugly person to be portrayed in a major role, everybody else would be like, oh my gosh, that person looks like me. Like, I can relate to that. But I guess that I mean, obviously, you know, if we get another layer deeper, they want to keep selling us stuff. And if we are constantly going after this goal of being like the thinnest and the prettiest and, you know, I guess for men, it's the handsomest, the strongest, but like, that's why they got to keep everybody really hot in these media things.
I guess that's it. And I've always thought that in comedy, it's an advantage to whatever, look different, look weird, look how you look. And, you know, frankly, there's not that many objectively beautiful, again, whatever that means, comedians. It's one of the beefs I have with Matt Rife. It's like, what is he doing having a 6-pack?
That's what I was thinking of too. Yeah.
With the high cheekbones. That's not fair.
Yeah, no. And I mean, yeah, it's one of the things I've loved most about comedy is I do think it's like, it's so about that person's personality. Like, I always think of like, you can be a really, really great joke writer, but my favorite comedians, it's like, you can almost think of the energy that person embodies, or like the way that it feels when they walk on stage before you even think of one of their jokes. Like there's just there's a certain space that they take up in your mind. A really, really good comedian, in my opinion. It's just, I mean, like Miss Pat, I could think of all of her jokes and all of her stories, but there's just it's Miss Pat, it's a certain energy to what she does.
Yeah. And that is the beauty of what you do, which is so unique, at least to me. I've heard it said that, you want people to walk away and tell you in the lobby afterwards or on social media that you were great or they liked it or they laughed. So you want to see them laughing. But the real compliment is when they tell you that they told someone else one of your jokes or they tell you back one of your lines, and your stuff is, particularly because it's put the song, but for other reasons as well. It's so memorable. I imagine you get a lot of people sort of bringing life to it, independent of the life that you bring to it.
Yeah, no, I think probably my two favorite compliments are if somebody has one of my songs stuck in their head, that feels really good. Or one that I get a lot that I really, really love is I'll have like a friend who is also a comedian. Usually it'll be like a male comedian will say like, my girlfriend can't stop talking about you. She just absolutely loved you. And I'm like I feel like I won the lottery if I get, because I'm, like girlfriends of comedians see so much comedy. They have to, they don't have to, but in general, if they're a supportive and loving partner, they're watching a lot of shows. And so to make an impression on somebody who's kind of seen it all feels really, really good.
Yeah. I mean, and certainly you have something unique to offer in comedy and, not to sound misogynistic, but unique for a female comedian, in part because, and I don't know if you agree or disagree, I'd be interested to hear your perspective more than mine. There's certain things that female comedians seem to feel like they have to have in their material. And I, talking about, I don't know, just sex positions or things that sometimes are very funny, but I almost feel bad for female comedians that they sometimes have to go there. You talk about body image and other things, but it's in a much different way. At least it feels to me as a male comedian listening to your humor. How do you see that?
So I think that I just want to start by saying, like, I applaud and tip my hat to any woman who's pursuing any kind of career or hobby or anything in comedy. I think it's really, really set up for us to want to quit and give up. And so the fact that there are so many more women sticking it out now than we've ever seen, I think is it really, really exciting for the art form. And I really love that. All that being said, I think that, and this is a pitfall that I think everybody, like regardless of gender, can fall into. I think a lot of people, when they're first starting out, it's like two things. Either they're trying to imitate one of their favorite comedians and they haven't yet found their own voice, or they're trying to impress the other comedians in the room who are usually like the Regina Georges of their scene. You know what I mean? Like the people who kind of run shit in your scene. When you begin, you're writing jokes thinking, oh, does this guy think this is funny? Does this guy think this is cool? And ultimately, people are not going to buy tickets to see an impersonation of a comedian that's already made it. They will go see that comedian's already made it. So you don't want to try to just do like a regurgitated version of them. You want to find the most authentic thing to your voice. And with that, if you're trying to write to impress the guys in the back aren't going to buy tickets to your show. And even if they do buy tickets to your show, that's like 3 tickets. You want to build a whole audience. So I think that, women, men, non-binary people, everybody all across the board, whatever your identity, the best favor you can do for yourself is just write what's true to you. And I think part of that is thinking about like, what is the most unique thing to me that I can talk about that nobody else is talking about? Because I think that, in the same way, it's become a trope, men talking about their wife being bitches or men talking about their dick. Like those things are tropes as well, in the same way that like certain, topics for women are a trope. It is an experience that we all have. So it's a relatable thing to talk about. But is there an angle? Is there a way in that's so unique to you that nobody's done that? I think that that's what is more interesting to me, is just like you're basically, it's almost impossible, but you're trying to be wildly unique and original while also being super relatable. Just like those things are contradictory concepts. But I think that that's really the way that you build your audience, is because like what feels super, super unique to you, there's actually a lot of people who've had that same lived experience. Because that's just being a human. Like you're not as unique as you think you are. But the thing that is unique about you is what is your path forward.
Yeah. And obviously for comedy or any art form, it's your ability to express it in a way that, it's relatable and entertaining. Yeah, no, I appreciate that perspective. So I'm interested in your family. We talked about your sisters. Talk about your parents. I know you grew up in Indiana. Grew up in a home with two parents.
Yes, yeah. So my parents, they're both engineers. They met at Purdue University. Well, no, they like reconnected at Purdue University, but they actually met in high school. They both went to Chesterton High School, which is like one town over from Valparaiso, where I grew up. Okay. And they in high school, they both were like kind of like, they're like weird. It's funny because it's like, you wouldn't know it talking to them now, but they both they played in a band together and they were like very artistic and into music. And so it does make sense that, like their kids, like me and my older sister, my older sister's an actress. I do comedy. Younger sister is a nurse. And then my younger brother is going to school right now to be a psychologist. I think psychiatrist, actually. My apologies. But sorry, Ben. Sorry, I got it wrong. Ugh. But okay. Yeah, I have a brother who is 12 years younger than me. I didn't really talk about him on my first album just because it was really important to me that I waited till he was like of adult age before including him in my jokes, just because like I just, I don't want to say something about a minor who can't, he can't defend themselves. It doesn't seem fair. But my brother was kind of an oops baby. He was born when I was in the 5th grade. And then, me and my sisters are all 2 years apart. Parents, both engineers. I would say like my mom, personality wise, is very much like people pleasing, a little bit of a busybody, like very classic Midwestern woman. And then my dad, the angsty version of me that you get in some of my songs on stage, which is what makes it so funny, because I'm like quiet and sweet and nice, but then I have like these little moments of rage, those little bursts of rage, like that is my dad's personality coming out. Because I think my dad is the CEO of just chill. It's not a big deal. You're making a mountain out of a molehill, but then he'll have these just eruptive, like angry outbursts over seemingly insignificant things that are very significant to him. And that it's just a fun dynamic to grow up with. They're very, very much both sort of enmeshed in my personality, but in very different ways.
Right. And then I ask, as the father of a few daughters, how would you say your dad was at raising girls, at least 3 before the boy came along?
Yeah, I think my dad was really good at raising girls. I think he did his absolute best. I do feel like part of me thinks that maybe like having three daughters was my dad's sort of like lesson in this life, just because he does, have a lot of love to give, but is also very like nonchalant and chill and cool. And so I can imagine, having daughters probably forced him to have to be a little bit more emotionally vulnerable and a little bit more soft and caring and considerate. But that's the only version of him I know. Mm-hmm. So I think that he kind of like immediately snapped into that as soon as he had girls. But I also I think of all the time, my dad, they had like this thing that came out, I think during 2020, it was like questions you can ask your parents while they're still around. And I was just feeling very, anxious about losing my parents because of everything that was happening with the coronavirus. And I remember I did this interview with him, and I don't even remember his answer to any of the other questions, but I remember one of the questions was, if you could give me any advice, what would you give me? Like, what advice would it be? And his advice was, don't have children. And then the following, like the question right after was, what is your proudest achievement in this life? And he said, my children. And so I feel like that is like a perfect, sum up of him as a girl dad.
Yeah, I can relate to that, actually. That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, one of the feedback that I get from particularly my youngest daughter who's still at home is, and I just got it yesterday and it was beautifully articulated, that I need to just, she didn't use this word exactly, but I need to, just say that something's messed up when she's complaining about something and don't try to solve it. And I would imagine having two parents who were engineers, at least one was female. But yeah, do you get a lot of solution orientedness when you needed something else?
Yes. No, there's a lot of solutionness as well as a lot of you're making a mountain out of a molehill. I know like one of the big things that I had kind of said to my therapist. I go to therapy. I'll be honest. I don't blame my parents for that though. I've been through a lot in my life. So it's a few things, but I remember, one of the things I mentioned is like, I think I always had this fantasy of like, I would do a certain thing in my career or a certain thing would happen. And my parents would be like, Jamie, we're proud of you. And it's like, I kind of had the realization after kind of unpacking that and just going through the next calendar year and having some of these big things happen that I thought would lead to the we're proud of you admission. Those words don't come out of their mouth, but they are proud of me and They do love me. It's just people show up in different ways. And I think that one of the things that has really been healing for me is the realization that like my parents were the age that I am at now, possibly younger when they had me. And I have no idea what the fuck I'm doing. So who am I to think that they had any fucking tools? Like they did great, given the fact that, yeah, they didn't really have any experience with having a kid prior to just having them. So,
yeah. No, I can relate to that. I'm obviously older than you, and my parents both just passed away in the past 2 years. My mom just a month or so ago.
I'm so sorry.
Thanks. Yeah, Dad. But so I was there at my mom's funeral in September, I guess it was. And yeah, it was kind of an organic eulogy. But what occurred to me, they were married for 65 years, not necessarily, the most functional marriage day in and day out. But they stuck it together. And yeah, they did the best they could with who they were and what they knew and who they were raised by. They were making it up as they went along, just like I'm doing.
Yeah. No, and I think that that's exactly it. And I think that like across all generations and like whatever age you are, like you can't change the past, but in the future, you can take a look at the things that maybe you've internalized that aren't helping you and just each day with the decisions you make, because it's not going to be overnight, but like every single day, try to chip away at that and like rewrite anything that's not helpful and not true. I think that that's a big thing too, is it's like when you're like between birth and 5 years old, you're kind of retaining everything that your parents say is law. And I can't tell you how many times I've just thrown out something, as words that is just like a thought that's in my mind. I can't imagine having somebody little around me and they're just like, oh yeah, like that's the law of the land. And then they hold on to that their entire, like you can internalize that when you're little, but then you have to grow up and look at the things you internalized and go, oh, that's actually not factually true. I don't know who said that or where that came from. Doesn't really matter though. It's my job to undo that.
Yeah. Certainly experienced that. You get into a relationship, not even a romantic relationship, just a person, and you articulate something that was just a given in your home growing up. And they're like, yeah, that's not even close to accurate, or you don't have to do that.
Yeah, I know. One of the biggest epiphanies I've had this year is it's like, there's so many, like in romantic relationships as well as friendships, moments where I was like, oh, I can't do that. Like I have to do this other thing. And I kind of started asking myself like, okay, well, why can't you? And then I was like, well, they'll be mad. And it's like, okay, like them being mad is not a law being broken or somebody dying. It's not illegal. Like if they're mad, they can be mad, but also like, is them being mad like a bigger deal than me spreading myself too thin, inconveniencing myself and making myself unhappy. Like, no, it's like, no. And I think that it is a delicate balance, because I do think that we, sometimes avoid community because we don't want to be inconvenienced at all. But like, if you're overextending yourself, you have to be willing to have those difficult conversations and go, oh, I'm going out of my way to do things for people to avoid them being mad, who would not, like have a second thought about making the different choice where the roles reverse. They would choose themselves and their mental health and happiness over inconveniencing themselves because I wouldn't get mad. So that's the other thing too, is it's like showing up for others the way they would show up for you, and showing up for yourself the way that you show up for others.
Yeah. And certainly, you've just described the Midwestern mentality, it seems to me. And I don't know, maybe I'm a frustrated Midwesterner because I love pleasing people. I hate disappointing people. And yeah, when you live your life that way, that's just exhausting.
Oh, yeah, it really is. And it's like, I think that the other big one I had to kind of start letting go of, and I don't know if it's funny because I wasn't raised with religion, but my parents were both raised Christian and had a lot of the internalized guilt stuff. And so I know, like, anytime something bad happens, I'll like tell myself like, oh, I'm being punished for like, maybe I did something wrong a week, but it's like, and anytime anything good happens, I'm like, oh, a shoe's going to drop. And it's like, I do believe in like balance and things will reorder themselves, but that thinking is not healthy. That thinking is not based in reality.
It can hold you back. That's for sure. So let's talk about obviously the theatrical background. When did you get into theater, and what do you remember about sort of your eyes opening to that process?
Yeah. So basically, when I was a little girl, I wanted to do everything my big sister did. And so she was doing a play at Chicago Street Theater in our hometown called The Christmas Story. It was basically like the stage play version of the Ralphie, You'll Shoot Your Eye Out movie. Mm-hmm. And so she went and auditioned. She got the lead part of like the kids. She's Esther Jane, which is like Ralphie's love interest. Yeah. And then I was one of the extras. So I just was like a student in the classroom scene. And I was 8 years old when I did my first play. And I just loved it. I kept doing plays, went to undergraduate for musical theater. And then I also got a master's degree in writing for musical theater. So I think, theater is a huge part of my life. I definitely have joked many times that comedy is my pipeline to end up on Broadway, which was my original plan. But yeah. I think theater is such a fun format for storytelling, and there's just like certain devices within, dramatic plays and musical theater and all these different styles of, live performance that I think lend themselves really well to what I do in my comedy. And they're references that like, they're still funny for people who don't know musical theater, but the people who do know musical theater get to have that fun, like insider scoop moment where they're like, oh, she's doing this thing that I know from this. And that's fun for me to get to do that for the theater nerds such as myself.
No, I feel it. I grew up in theater and did my first play when I was about 8 or 9 and did it pretty extensively until about age 18, and then didn't do it at all. Haven't done it since, and didn't do comedy until about 10 years ago. So it's real fun to scratch that itch again, because I do think there's obviously a parallel between the two.
Can I ask, Mike, what's your favorite like play that you ever did or role that you played when you were doing between like 8 and 18? What was your favorite part that you got to do?
Yeah, I never had the best parts. I was in a lot of dinner theater and spent months doing like Oliver, not as Oliver, but as, something a little better than an extra, but not a named character, I had a bunch of different parts. I was in the national touring company of the Columbia artist Camelot. And so I had a pretty good part. I had the only kid part. I was 13 or 12 or 13, and I played Tom of Warwick. And so that was kind of cool. It's a pretty significant part, but it's a very brief part. If you've seen Camelot, he just comes in near the end of the show, and King Arthur tells him the story of Camelot as Camelot's going up in smoke. So that was pretty neat experience, being the only kid in a national tour for, months on end. Yeah. So that was my experience. I would say Camelot probably is the one I bring the most memories from, but half of it's what happened backstage and, just traveling.
Yeah, no, I think that like all the backstage hangouts, and also just like as a kid who did theater as well, there's a certain coolness to like, especially you in a national tour, you got to be around all these adults and like these adult theater people, and you probably felt like, well, I'm being paid to do this show and I get to go on tour. Like that's very cool. I did not exactly the same thing, but there was a regional production. So it's funny, A Christmas Story is a huge part of my early theater memories, because my first production of A Christmas Story was when I was 8. But then when I was like 12, the regional professional theater company put on A Christmas Story, and I was cast. Actually, originally I was cast as Esther Jane, which is the same part as my sister. And it, like when she first did it, and I was so happy because I was like, oh, I'm good enough to play the same part as my sister. But then this is actually kind of a cool story that I actually forgot happened. But the director decided the week before we opened that he wanted me and Helen to switch roles. He was like, I actually want Helen to be Esther Jane and you to be Helen. And I was like, well, that seems like kind of a quick turnaround for me to learn a whole new part. I just don't know why you're doing this. And because I questioned him, he said, okay, well, then you're fired.
Oh my.
And so I got fired from the production. And I was obviously devastated because I was 11 or 12 years old. And all I did was just ask a question, and an adult man unemployed me. But then my parents had a conversation with the director and said, hey, she'll do the other part. Like, she just asked you a question. Like, please don't do this. And so he gave me back my part. But that guy is still like a prominent director in the Chicagoland area. And all the time when I see his name on things, I'm like, you are a butthead.
Wow.
But I'm glad I still got to do the play. But yeah, I just can't imagine, like, as an adult myself now, I can't imagine being so cutthroat with a literal child.
Yeah. Did you ever get any insight into what his thinking was? Yeah.
No, I don't know. And the thing is like, I was a child at the time. So like, I remember just asking it directly, but maybe my tone was bratty, or maybe he didn't like, I don't know. But either way, it's like, I'm a kid.
Yeah. And
like, why would you not approach my parents first?
Right.
Because yeah, you could have approached my parents. My parents could have explained the situation to me. We could have had a conversation. Like, it's one of those things that's like, as an adult, I might ask my dad after I get off of this with you and be like, hey, do you remember that? Like, how did that go down?
That would be interesting. Yeah, you're actually triggering some memories for me. Like, I remember I was playing Ralph in The Sound of Music, which my Jewish parents were real thrilled that I was playing a Nazi. But I had to drive quite a big distance to do this show in another town. And I was getting paid a little bit. But I was 16 or 17 at the time, so I could drive. And midway through the show run, the owner brought everyone together and said that they were losing money and that they were, basically not able to pay anybody. And did we still want to keep doing the show? Basically as a community theater, which is not an illegitimate choice, but there I was, old enough to drive, but having to deal with these adult problems, not my adult problems, other adults' problems, and that certainly happens a lot.
Yeah.
Crazy
Oh
time.
Man, I can't imagine just like you're midway through production and then just, sorry, we can't pay you anymore. If like for the adults who that's probably like their source of livelihood. It's
yeah, and I was just paying gas money to get to the place. So, is there a break between your pursuit of theater at a high level and getting a master's degree and when you entered comedy, or do they sort of overlap and then move more in the direction of comedy?
There's sort of an overlap. Yeah. I see the overlap is, so my first open mic was actually while I was still living in Scotland. There was like a mic at a bar and I was very drunk and my friends were like, you should try it. And I got on stage and I tried it and I was like, that was fun. And then I didn't really think about it again until when I moved back to the States. I was in Chicago and I had this one woman show that I had written called Wife Material. And so I was doing these variety shows where I would do songs from my one woman show just to try to like get the word out and get people to come out to the performances. And at these shows, I met a bunch of people who did stand up because it was a variety show. So a lot of the acts on the variety show were stand ups. And so they started inviting me to like their other shows. And so I would go to these other stand up shows. And I think kind of what got me back into pursuing stand up again was that every time I would go to one of these shows, there was usually only one woman on the show. And her material was very much usually written in a way, like I described earlier, where you could tell she was trying to impress the guys in the room. She wasn't really like being herself. And this isn't just one person. This is like several shows that I saw like this. And it really kind of just lit a fire under my butt, because I had a few people tell me like, oh, you were so good when you did that in Scotland. And like, what you're doing is already so close to this. Why don't you just give it a shot? And I was just very scared because I knew it was such a, similar to what I'd already said, I knew it was such a male dominated field that I was like, do I really want to like put myself in this environment that's going to kind of initially be quite hostile and not welcoming to me and what I'm doing? And, right. Ultimately I just said like, oh, I want to give it a shot. Cause I wanted to be the person on the lineup that even if, cause I really appreciate that you find myself relatable, Mike, but there'll be times that I do a show and I'm not relatable to the men in the room and they don't really like what I'm doing. But I wanted to be the person on the lineup that gets on stage and the people in the audience who didn't relate to the four guys talking about Uber and Tinder and their dicks could have somebody to relate to. And so that's kind of what got me going. And it was like, I kind of just did a mic a few days after going to one of those showcases, realized that it wasn't ready yet and I needed to keep working on the jokes. And I think I just kept working. I kept working on the jokes. And here we are almost 9 years later. But yeah.
I love that. And when does song enter the picture? It's got to be pretty soon with you.
So it's funny. The songs, I love when people ask about the songs because I started with the songs and people were not fucking with the songs. Like people in Chicago were very much not welcoming and made me feel like the gunk under their shoe when I showed up with my speaker, my ukulele. And so I think it's funny because we talked about my kind of more quiet personality. I think I was a lot younger then as well. And so I was like, oh, well, this is making people uncomfortable. People don't like this. I'm going to try to just get really good at stand up. And so I stopped doing the songs. I really focused on my joke writing and my storytelling and kind of just, you know, what have I been through that I could talk about that's going to be funny. And then the pandemic happened and in Chicago, we couldn't get on stage. Like you just could not perform for about a year and a half. And I was, you know, making sketches for social media in the house and I was writing songs. And I just promised myself, I said, when I get back on stage, whenever this is done, I'm not worrying about what these people in the back think anymore. Because I can see so clearly in my mind, if I just get dedicated to it, I know what I'm trying to do. Like I want it to be the way that I've always described what I'm trying to do in my mind is I wanted it to be like you're watching a traditional stand-up show and all of a sudden it's a musical theater number. And then when the track ends, it's like, so I stand like it immediately goes back to stand-up. Yeah. It's, you know, these musical moments are supposed to kind of flow easily in and out of the stand-up. And that's very specific to my style. Because I think that a lot of musical comedians, they'll get on stage and they'll maybe have a little riff in between songs, but it's all songs all the time. Yeah. I consider myself a stand-up comedian as well. And I know that I have the material and the jokes to back that up, that statement. Mm-hmm. So it's like, yeah, I think that ultimately I'm really grateful that they were not fucking with the songs because I think it helped me find my style. And I think that the kind of flowing in and out of the songs is what is unique about what I do.
Yeah. I don't know. I didn't time any of your sets or the ones online or your specials, but it seems pretty equal. It seems like you do some straightforward stand-up that seems to obviously cue into a song, and then you come back out of the song with a transition and have some more jokes, etc. And so I guess when you're writing, if I'm right, are you writing the sort of the non-musical material to feed the music, or the music to feed the non-music material, or does it just sort of happen?
So I feel like there's two different, I guess, formats to how I write. I would say there's writing with a purpose in mind, and then the pantry method, and I'll describe both. So like, if I'm with a specific thing in mind, I'll have an idea where I'm like, oh, what if I wrote a R&B song about a woman who can't stop getting sand in her vagina? Like Sandy Pussy was literally just, I was like, wouldn't that be so silly if she just keeps finding herself in these situations? And that isn't really like true to my personal life or like what I've been through. I was more just like, this is a funny idea. Right. And so then I kind of just write around that idea. My other way of writing is I call it the pantry method, because it's like, I'll maybe have like a little bit of a melody or a one-liner or just like something. And I'm like, I don't know what this is for yet, but let me write this down, or I'll put it in my notes app, or I'll put it off to the side. And then sometimes I kind of sit down and I go through all those little things and see it's like when you're trying to cook with what's in your pantry. I'm like, does any of this fit together? And then I think when I'm crafting my hours, I kind of just sit down and I look at what I have, and then I allow my theater background to help me figure out the right order for it. So like with Nightmare Factory that just came out, the joke that I do about, it's like a joke about thinking a clove of garlic was the whole thing.
Right.
I didn't really know where to fit that in the special. And I was sitting there and I like, basically I'd written all the joke and song titles on note cards, and I was trying to just like put it in order. And I was like, I don't know where to put this. And then I realized, I was like, wait, in this story, I'm running down the street at the end of the story. And earlier I talk about like, every time I put on heels, I fall down and hit the ground so hard that I remember something. I'm like, wouldn't this be a fun moment to like, I hit the ground and I remember. So it's like, sometimes the order of things I won't really figure out until I have to have it for a specific purpose, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
so like
no,
within the context of like, like for the festival we did in Plano, the way that I set up those sets is like, I'll pick what songs I'm doing, and then the jokes kind of are interchangeable based on what songs I'm doing. Like there's certain jokes I like to do before certain songs, but generally I can reorder that.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I can only think about it in relation to how I create and write. And for me, and obviously I don't have the style that you have. Wish I did, but I just think of something that I hope is funny, and then I'm like, what's funny about that, and try to build a joke around it. But in the example you gave, you're actually saying, all right, here's a funny rhythm, here's a funny concept. Wouldn't that be, funny to put the two together? And then you create the lyrics, a lot like creating a theatrical production, really.
Yeah. No, and it's funny because I've had a few people online specifically say, I need to write a musical. And so at some point in the next 5 years, I will dedicate myself to actually doing that. Because I do think it's really the long form version of what I already do. And so it would just require a little bit more focus and discipline that I'm used to having. But yes, it is very similar to putting together theatrical stuff.
Yeah, maybe only in the sense that you would have to put a through line, but you make the mistake. You create musicals already. I mean, it is musical theater, what you do, whether it's a 10-minute set or one of your specials. It definitely, from an audience perspective, it feels very much like musical theater, without some of the negative aspects of it. So I enjoy the heck out of it. So festivals are a big part of what you do. You and I got to meet during them. Tell me, what was your first festival? And not everybody loves the festivals from a comedian perspective. Not everyone has good experiences. It sounds like you really thrive in them, and certainly bring your best. What was your first, and what do you think about sort of how you get the most out of festivals?
Yeah, what was my first, and how do you get the most out of festivals? Okay, so my first one, I'm pretty sure it's a tie between. I think that they were the same weekend, and they're both my first. It was the Mary and Mommy Joseph Comedy Festival in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And then the other one was somewhere in Michigan, and it was a fundraiser for Alzheimer's.
And did you say Marion, Mommy, and
what
Joseph?
I remember about both of those, yeah, it was called like Mary, Mommy, Joseph. It's a festival that happens in Fort Wayne, and Mommy is spelled Maumee.
Okay. Maybe because it's Christmas.
And I remember that was in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Yeah. It's like, I don't know where they get the title from, but I remember both of those festivals just being so excited to finally be selected for a festival. And I remember like, it was kind of cool, the community of it. Cause I remember specifically the one in Fort Wayne, I was booked on shows with people from Chicago who I had not met in Chicago yet. Because Chicago is a big scene. So it was like, we hadn't worked together in Chicago yet, but we got to work together at this festival. And I think that like, I had the pleasure of this year. I did Plano, which we were out together. I also did Let's Fest in Indianapolis and Bend Comedy Festival. And I try to do, a few a year. I think the benefit of a festival lies in, you should be looking out for two things. A big thing is it going to be a fun time? Like ask people because we have a huge network of comedians all over the country, people that you've met from other festivals, find somebody who's done that festival and ask them what they thought of it. And I think the first thing you should ask is, was it a fun time? Because like ultimately, even if my second thing is going to be industry being there. Obviously, if you do a festival with industry there, that has inherent huge value to your career as a comedian. But if there's not industry there and it's a really good time and you make good connections and it's set up in a way where they're actually fostering community and helping you build your network, I think that's still a festival worth doing. I feel like, part of what's allowed me to be able to tour as much as I do is the connections I've made at festivals. Because if I, get offered a show somewhere in Texas and I'm like, okay, I'd love to do that, but I want to maybe do a few stops on the way, I can reach out to the people I met on festivals in Kentucky and in Tennessee and say, hey, do you got something for me on these, fill these days on the way? And also like you can help bring comedians from other scenes back into your scene as well. So I think it's just festivals to me, it's a way of building your network and, branching out. And also generally for a festival, you're performing in a city or in a scene that's not your own. I also am realizing in this moment, I knew there was a festival I was forgetting. I also did the Windy City Festival in Chicago, which is my city. So it's a city I'm used to performing in. Plano, for example, it's kind of a very different demographic from where I live. And so the opportunity to get up there and see that my stuff still works is really, really exciting. Because I think ultimately what we're all working towards is you want your material to work everywhere you go. So I think that that's probably the biggest benefit of festivals is seeing that your stuff works other places. And you don't necessarily have to do a festival to find that out. You can go and you can hit the road and do a bar show or hop on local spots. But festivals are nice in that they're organizing the shows for you. They're getting people to come out. You just have to show up and do your time.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. And I think I told you I hadn't done more than a couple festivals. So certainly enjoyed doing that one. And one of the best things to come out of it was I got to meet you and see what you did. Love to get you back. Love to get you down here to Florida to do some shows. Mary, who I was traveling with, loved the heck out of you. So thanks for being such a good colleague when we were there. And thanks for being a good sport to come on the podcast. I really appreciate everything that you do, not just from a comedian standpoint, but the way you speak to people with mental health challenges and just other things that they're dealing with. I think you do it in a beautiful way. And I can't wait to continue to follow your career.
Oh, thank you.
Well, there you have it. That was me with the very funny Jamie Schreiner. Definitely a unique perspective on things and insights into obviously not just her life, but her comedic journey. I hope you enjoyed that. If you enjoyed that episode, I know you would also enjoy perhaps some of the other comedians I've been fortunate enough to interview, including Helen Hung and Michael Palisak, also from Indiana, and Lee Harden and Danny Johnson and a handful of others. Got a few more coming up before the end of the year. So I hope you enjoyed that interview. I hope you'll subscribe. I hope you'll share this episode. And I hope you'll come back and join us next time on My First Rodeo. My first rodeo.